Hello and welcome to episode 19 of the Daily Tip Show here on the Inspired Business TV channel. Now in today's topic, we are going to be looking at why do I get distracted? Have you, during lockdown, found that maybe you've been doing a lot more activity, maybe doing lots of multitasking, but actually achieved a lot less than you would normally? Have you found that you've been there doing things, maybe looking at this, being in front of the PC a lot longer than normal, but actually not achieved as much? Well, today we are going to give you the science behind why you've got distracted. And we're going to give you some useful tips on how to avoid it. So if you are that person, then this is the episode for you. My name is Setterfield. I'm here with my good friend and business partner, Sukhi Wahiwala.
Hello, team. I hope everybody's very well, and we're all moving forward in this trying and challenging time. But this episode's going to be quite enlightening, and I hope everyone's connected to the inspiredtribe.io. Also, see you soon.
Thanks, Sukhi. Now, Sukhi, during the last period of lockdown, a number of our Inspired Tribe colleagues have been talking to us about they've been getting distracted. So can I ask you the basic question and the fundamental one is, what is a distraction? And I suppose, do we all get distracted?
That's a really deep question there, Gary. I think the answer to this question, if we look at from an ego base, then the answer is, of course, I don't get distracted. Ego has only ever given us one thing, and that's ignorance, or the ability to not learn. That's what ego always gives us. So if I go with the base of saying on the basis of ego, then of course I'm never distracted. Yeah. But in reality, in the reality of life, I believe every single human being is distracted at some point in their day. And I'll explain why, because of what we've got is a conscious brain, the beta thinking brain. Our alpha feeling unconscious brain. I think we spoke about this very clearly within the CUC loop, learning loop. I think it was episode 17. And we went really deep into the understanding of brain and that one. So please do watch episode 17. It's going to be life-changing for yourself, understanding the conscious and unconscious minds. So the principle of conversation is that if we didn't have the beta, the conscious brain, then we wouldn't have any distractions because we'd always be doing the thing that we're aligned to. But in this iteration of our life source and our world, our thinking process is that the moment you can think about something and forward plan something, you can also encourage a distraction. So what is a distraction? A distraction, if I could explain this very simply, it's kind of having a can or a tin of, let's say, baked beans or whatever it is that we've got, and it's opening those tins. And after you've opened those tins, it's like not using it and leaving the tin half open on the side. What I mean by that is that it's opening lots of cans of worms, baked beans, make it easier. But we get in a situation, Gary, where an individual doesn't complete the task, and this within itself creates a distraction. Is that making any sense?
Totally. And I can visualize opening lots of cans of tasks, for example.
Spot on. That's exactly what we're talking about. Now, the Inspired Tribe are the people who are engaged with any of our programs or in our community on our social. So if you want to get involved in Feel Good Friday, please follow the link that's just coming up right now. And then just register. It's free every single Friday between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Don't hold yourself back. Get involved in the community, and we can just be like-minded thinking thought processes. We have lots of intellectual, deep conversations in our specialist breakout rooms live on Zoom as well. Okay, so back to what a distraction is. Now, if I can share very openly with yourself, we're all open to distractions all the time with a conscious can. Opening of all these cans, and we're not actually emptying the content, we're just not even completing the content. And in some cases, we've started to cut the surface of the tin, but we're not actually completing that as well. So if I could just push a little bit further forward, the question is, a distraction is what's taking me away from a conscious task. It's something that's stopping me from thinking clearly on the one thing and staying focused. So by all means, if anybody is an avid follower of the Daily Tips show, do rewatch episode 13. It'll be coming up on the screen as well. Episode 13 is about the DFT, the clarity versus focus method. It's very important to understand that, because if you want to get actions and tasks done, when you start to emulate or activate the thinking process and the protocols of DFT clarity and DFT focus, what happens is that distractions start to naturally reduce, just to let you know. So a distraction, I think the key question is we're clear on what distraction is. Something that's an open task that's not been completed, or something that's constantly interesting you to take you away, a bit like that magpie effect. Deciding to do something when somebody shows you a particular task and you're in the middle of doing something, somebody shows something shiny and you go, oh, that's nice, that's colorful, and you start doing that as well, if you understand where I'm coming from again. Now, the principle is that how often do you think we get distracted? So that's the key question that comes in my brain, because if I am distracted, my physical question or emotional or intellectual conversation is, how often? Well, in accordance with, well, first things first, feel free to please write down in the comments how long you think you can concentrate for without actually getting distracted. So in accordance with the psychology, the Royal School of Psychology of London, there is an understanding, and it's been proven by many other methodological researchers as well, that an average human being gets distracted, wait for it, Gary, every 3 minutes. Every 3 minutes, they're thinking of something other than the task they're doing. Now, there is a little caveat here. The caveat is that how can I extend that 3 minute worth of concentration? Well, it's about being completely engrossed in flow. And we'll talk about that just a bit later in this episode. But that will allow me to stretch the muscle of my mind to get further into holding concentration for longer periods of time. But if I can go a bit deeper into our understanding of clarity here, the first thing that we must understand is that I get distracted every 3 minutes. So that means I'm doing a wonderful task. I'm in the middle of writing something, drawing something, coloring something, or even doing a conscious task on an Excel. And then all of a sudden, Gary, if you can understand, is that somebody or something reiterates itself inside my brain and says, oh, that needs to be done as well. So that millisecond of distraction, if I don't log it down, it's like a loving puppy. It's like a beautiful puppy that wants to attend your attention, and it'll keep scratching at you, keep playing with you until you give it the love and attention. So it'll be sitting there. If I don't get a pen and paper, and if you want to double check this, watch episode 13 of DFT, if I don't pen to paper it, it doesn't evolve the action. It doesn't get it out of my brain. So I can park it somewhere so I can restore that activity. So would you like to know how long it takes, as soon as I've distracted somebody, how long it takes for their brain to actually get back into exactly the same cognitive place or thereabouts, and to continue with the task that was originally at hand before distraction? The question that arises in my mind is, I would like to know, if I'm getting distracted, how long does it take for me to loop back into concentration? Now, there is actually another science very clearly here. Very clearly, by the same study, it's proven, and this is going to be surprising to some, the world of distraction. How long does it take me to get focused again? It takes, the moment I get distracted, let's say 3 minutes into a task, a quick distraction, it takes me 15 minutes to get back into the same state of focus. It's mind-boggling, 15 minutes to get back into the state of focus. Now we talk about the infinite loop. I'm sure our audience has started something which they should take, let's say, an hour to do or 15 minutes, and somehow it's taken a half a day to complete. They started the project, they're completely doing stuff like what you said in your introduction today, getting lots of stuff and tasks done. But somehow it's taking them longer, or it may be taking you a time when you should have taken an hour, it's taking you 4 hours to complete, or you've got to the 4 hour point and you still have not completed it, right? So in this situation, this is what we call, in the SynaGus method, it's called the infinite loop of distraction. This is, if I explain, you're starting a task, 3 minutes into the task, you get distracted, and it takes you 15 minutes, if you can imagine, 15 minutes to get back into the flow of that original task. But what if all of a sudden, 3 minutes into getting back into focus, you get distracted again? And then 3 minutes into getting back into focus again, you get distracted again, and then again and again. So this is what we call the infinite loop of time wasting. It's constant distraction because I am not actually clear. I've got so many cans open. And as you said in your intro, we're juggling constantly that I've gone beyond functionality. We're into a stage where we cannot actually focus on a task for a longer period of time. So I'll talk in the next episode, we're going to talk about how social media also supports this process. So we'll talk about that in episode 20. We're going to talk about the healthy way of engaging with social media. But the relevance of that conversation is the fact that if I cannot concentrate for a long period of time, I can't get tasks done that take a longer period of time of concentration. I have to constantly go into this loop. The downside of this is that what we were talking about is that what should have taken 15, 20 minutes takes an hour. So this leads us to a principle, Gary, a principle of the candy floss effect. So what is the candy floss effect? The candy floss effect, if you can imagine, if you take the candy floss itself, we all understand what that is. It's like you pump air into sugar and it becomes this lovely flow. And we all ate it when we were younger children as well, maybe even as adults. But the principle is that you could take a small amount of sugar, a small pellet of sugar. You heat it so it becomes gummy. And then the machinery pushes really hard and you blow air into the candy floss, and as it into the candy, and as it expands, it comes off in strings, and it becomes this floss, or what we call cotton wool style. So the same bit of matter or content or actual piece of sugar gets expanded to a massive composition like this. So it's this big. So this is the principle under the SynaGus method, which is a trademark program, and we talk about the methodology that I've authored with gratitude of God. That the candy floss effect is the actual identification of when we start a project and it's taken us 3 to 4 hours extra time to deliver the same outcome. Does that make sense? Gary, over to you.
It does, Sukhi. So this is where, candy floss, as you know, expands in the machines. We see it. You start off with a small and then suddenly you end up with this thing on a stick. And that's a bit like our tasks, which, as you've just mentioned, 15 minutes suddenly takes an hour, 2 hours takes 4 hours. How can we, actually, I'm going to ask you a question. Can we actually attribute that to a real life scenario? Because you've just twigged something in my mind, especially when you mentioned about puppies playing and pawing you. A friend of mine, dog walker, she has been working from home recently. And she mentioned just as she was passing, the fact that she has found herself obliged to answer emails, answer telephone calls, break her concentration, as you've mentioned earlier, because she feels obliged to answer these things as they come in. Now, I don't know whether it's a sense of because she's working from home or whatever, but she said to me openly that she doesn't do it at work. So can we apply this distraction and the tips to avoid it to that scenario, perhaps?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What a brilliant question. So here we've got to understand a couple of things. We've got multitasking within itself. And just because of the fact that this is focused on distractions and why I get distraction, multitasking is a strong contributor to this current state of not being focused on one thing for a long period of time. Because of the fact that your unconscious mind knows that it's opened all of these cans to be used of some kind, and there's a sell-by date on them. Some of them have got a timer that this task needs to be done by a certain time. So you're constantly thinking about that in the back of the mind. It's like walking with a small, a pebble or a rock in your shoe. You know it's there. You're walking. It's still functional. You can still walk. It's a small tiddly thing, but every time you do walk, it gives you a certain element of discomfort. It's like a consciousness in your brain. So you can ignore it, of course, but at some stage, that little pebble rock, because of your body weight going onto it again and again, may crack into two. So now you've got two distractions, 2 points of distraction in your foot. And every time you're traveling, you're going, ouch, ouch. It's reminding you you've got something in your foot. in your shoe and it's touching, causing you discomfort. That's exactly the same as having open tasks. Does that make sense? So when we're talking about those multitaskings, and I'm going to give an answer to the scenario you gave, but this is very important to clear first, is when we open up lots of tasks, which is multitasking, because there's a fable, and the fable is that multitasking makes you more productive. I'm afraid it does not. It's a proven concept, again, by the same schools, which I mentioned earlier on, that multitasking actually contributes to distraction and contributes to reduction in personal IQ, conscious IQ. Now that's a dangerous claim to be making, but let me give you an answer to this. We truly learn, if you look at the episode 17, I do apologize, with the CUC learning loop, you'll understand that completing the task is the key to learning from the task, a reflective mindset. So the principle, if you don't complete tasks, you don't actually learn. But in accordance with our current methodology of this world, where we call this NeuroPlasticity, the mind, there's a professor, Dr. Linda Boyd, who actually functions as one of the leading individuals in neuroplasticity from, I believe it's Canadian Columbia. So it's in the University of Columbia in Canada. And she basically is the forward researcher spoken on TED with gratitude. So I relate to it very strongly. And what they do basically is they talk openly about the principles of rewiring your brain in a constant live mode, which means that if I can liken and explain neuroplasticity, it means that the brain can learn. It's a muscle, nothing more, nothing less than a muscle. So as you work your bicep, the bicep gets bigger. And the brain is so efficient that if you don't use certain elements or certain neural paths or tracks, just to make it easier, it actually shrinks them and pauses them for a bit. So it uses energy in the areas that you are functioning in. So it becomes super efficient. So this works beautifully. The more you exercise those particular thought processes, the stronger and more robust those channels become. So if I can explain a little bit. So if one was to be suffering from let's say a stroke, you'll lose certain usabilities within that principle. So maybe you lose usage of your left hand, arm, mouth, speech slurs. Through neuroplasticity, they've worked out how to rewire the brain to take the same activity and same action. I'm not going into in deep depth because we'll talk about neuroplasticity in another episode and further down the line in DTS. But the principle is the wiring of the brain can get the same outcome, in action. So let's align this to the activity that we had in hand of multitasking. If I multitask, I open a task, I do not complete it, so I do not learn from it. And if I don't learn from the task, I can't add to my IQ because I can't remain stimulated. And the only stimulation that I'm actually doing, Gary, is that I'm pushing myself to get used to not completing a task and telling myself to say, it's okay, don't bother completing your task. It's not a problem. Just start another task. It's okay. That's normal. So how does this liken to the scenario you gave me with your dog walker buddy? So a friend of yours. And so she is doing tasks and not getting the stuff done because of multitasking and feeling this overwhelming feeling of having to be available on a call. Another few of our clients are in the same situation where they're working longer hours. We spoke about this in episode 2 of the Daily Tips show when we spoke about how to manage your days and how to be more compressed. So if you want some more information on that, please do watch episode 2. Once again, the link will come up now. The principal conversation is this, that if you are an individual who's feeling that you're obliged because you're being paid to work from home, that you've got to be active and you've got to always answer every email, always answer every phone call, what you'll end up doing with I suppose to an extent is an anti-productive mindset. You'll accidentally start to distract yourself from the core task at hand, and you'll be constantly thinking about an email's come through, a phone call's come through, I've got to make that phone call. What you need to start to do is to segment your day and place certain activities within certain times. So emails between X time and X time. Let's say its emails must be answered between maybe 9 and 10. And then maybe activity. Actions towards things should be done between 10 and 11. And maybe I should make phone calls between 11 and 12, etc. So you need to organize your day. And this is all in episode 2 of the daily tips show. So I'm not going to go even deeper into this. Please watch that to get all the evidence of that if you can. And what will happen is it synchronizes your day and you become super efficient. Get used to doing one task at a time. Now I'm going to leave your thoughts, if I may, Gary, with a bit of what we call it a mind bomb. And this is basically the principle that multitasking is actually impossible. There's no possibility that you can multitask consciously. Now here is where we're going to have tons of comments saying, what a load of rubbish, da, 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 da. It happens in our live events as well. We always have somebody saying something along the line. So I'm going to mention one of our mentees in Slovakia. Her name is Katarina, and she owns and runs the Real Woman Network. It's a brilliant, brilliant organization and initiative. Well done, and thank you for watching if you're here as well, Katka. In this principle, when I first delivered this in a training over there, she actually stood up in front of me because we had this rapport and she felt she could. And she said, well, that's impossible, Sukhi, because I, all the time, iron while watching a TV program at the same time. Now, I'm sure many of our viewers right now are thinking, well, that's true. How can you say it's impossible to consciously multitask? I do it all the time and I get so much more done. But this is the myth that we need to break, because the reality is that multitasking does not work. It allows us, I mean, we're going to be talking about this, as I said to you, in the next episode, or 20 or 21. But I'll just give you a clarity, a little bit of a cliffhanger. The reality is that ask yourself a beautiful question. At the time of ironing that exact crease, am I actually functioning or looking at the TV program and understanding exactly what's going on in that actual timeline? And at the point when something significant happens in the TV program or the video or the film or a part of a crescendo in the music, when I'm listening to it consciously, am I actually consciously thinking about the ironing? And you'll find the answer is no. So we'll delve that conversation much deeper in another episode, but I hope that's helped a little bit with our consciousness. My question to everybody else is that to realize that distraction is a natural thing. And us as human beings just need to learn to manage it and extend our period of time of concentration. And this is done with a conscious understanding of every action that needs to be done. And we follow it, write it down through DFT on a piece of paper, which gives us the opportunity to stretch the concentration time of in flow. So it'll have a counteracting activity in the sense of, instead of something expanding into the candy floss effect, where you should be taking 15 minutes and it's taken an hour and a half or even half a day, it will work the opposite way around, where something you think should take you an hour, you're done in 15 minutes. And we've all had those moments as well, haven't we? I hope that's helped today, Gary. Over to you.
Sukhi, absolutely amazing. And in case you missed any of it, we're going to come to the power tips very shortly, but I just wanted to thank you, Sukhi, for explaining it, clarifying it, and also breaking some myths. So, the power tip roundup. First of all, we looked at what is distraction. The duration time. We talked about the beta brain. We gave you a baked bean analogy. I'll let you go back and listen to that bit. But it's about opening lots of tasks. Then in power tip 2, how often do we get distracted? Every 3 minutes. But then we talked about power tip 3, which was the infinite loop of time wasting and distraction. How quickly do we then get back into concentration? Or does another 3 minutes come up and suddenly we then find ourselves distracted? We then looked at principle 4, power tip 4, which was the principle of the candy floss effect. How one simple task taking just 3 minutes suddenly becomes an hour. How does that work? Then we looked at power tip 5, the multitasking. The pebble or the stone that's in your shoe that keeps grinding, keeps awake, keeps annoying you. The element of conscious mind at the back of your mind, it's just there. This contributes also to distraction. Then power tip 6, we talked about neuroplasticity and the research done by Dr. Boyd, where the brain is a muscle. It needs, like the body, it needs exercising. Then we talked about in power tip 7, we drew you back to the Daily Tip Show, episode 2, how you bring it all together. Power tip 8, segment your day. This is how we overcome this. Doing your emails at a certain time, doing calls at a certain time, etc., etc. And those actions at specific times of the day. And then we came on to the last crucial part. All of you out there, power tip 9, multitasking is a myth. And we broke it. Not in great detail, but Sukhi did actually explain a little bit about how distraction is a natural phenomenon. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just learn to control it. So if you've got any comments, please write them down. If you've got any questions, please write them down below. And remember to follow Sukhi on his official social media channel, including YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And as I say, every episode, please share this with your friends, your family. Remember to go back over it, because you won't have got all this in one go. Revisit this and avoid those distraction times. So until the next episode, have a great day. Take care. Bye.